They say legacy is a gift. For me, it felt more like a chain. My name is Harper Quinn. I was born into Arizona wealth golf resorts, luxury hotels, and family dinners where your worth was measured in net returns. My younger brother and sister? Rising stars. My father? A real estate mogul? Me? The one who always failed upward, until I just failed. I launched businesses that crashed, dreams that burned, and every time, my family reminded me, you could just come work for Quinn Holdings. Translation: you're not built for more. I wanted to scream. I wanted to matter on my own terms. Then, one evening, I got a call from Zane, an old classmate, his voice buzzing with excitement. I've got a deal for you, a gas station. Middle of nowhere, dirt cheap, but trust me, it's gold. I laughed. But the thing is, I bought it. And that changed everything. They say your family knows you best. Mine knew how to dismantle me, piece by piece, with nothing but smiles and polished words. At 28, I had already started and lost 3 businesses. A wellness cafe that no one visited, a mindfulness app that crashed on launch day, and a denim brand that didn't survive past the first seasonal collection. Every time I tried to create something on my own, I returned to family dinners with fewer savings and more bruises on my pride. "How's the spiritual smoothie empire going?" my brother Colton would ask, sipping his bourbon. My sister Ivy would smirk, tilting her wine glass. I actually liked the branding. Very optimistic. And then, the final blow would come from my father, Charles Quinn, seated at the head of the table like a king dispensing verdicts. "Harper, if you're tired of playing entrepreneur, there's always a desk for you at Quinn Holdings." Every word felt like a velvet dagger. They didn't mean harm, not directly. They just didn't believe in me. To them, I was the daughter who refused to follow the plans, one who said no to law school, no to managing a spa resort in Aspen, no to smiling in boardroom photo ops. I wanted something that was mine, not something inherited. That, apparently, was my sin. I lived in a cramped studio apartment far from the Quinn estate in Paradise Valley. My kitchen sink dripped. My air conditioning wheezed. I still drove the same dented Camry I had in college, but it was mine. That mattered to me, even when it didn't seem to matter to anyone else. Some nights, I'd sit on the tiny balcony with a glass of cheap wine and stare at the skyline lit up by my family's empire, the Quinn name in gold letters on resort towers. Their worlds sparkled, mine flickered. And yet, I couldn't stop trying. Every failure stung, but what stung more was the knowledge that my worth in their eyes was directly tied to my ability to fit into their system. I didn't want to join Quinn Holdings. I wanted to prove I could build something worth holding onto without them. I didn't know then that rock bottom wasn't the end. It was the foundation. It was a hot, dusty Tuesday when Zane called. An old college acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years. "You still trying to make it big?" He laughed over the phone. I was too tired to lie, trying and failing. "Well," he said, his voice laced with mischief, "I've got a place you might want to see. An abandoned gas station on the outskirts of Gila Bend. Looks like junk now, but I've got a feeling." I should have said no. I almost did. But something in me whispered, what if this is it? What if the world finally laughs, and I laugh last? I met Zane 2 days later in a sun-bleached diner off Interstate 10 just past Buckeye. He hadn't changed much, same slicked back hair, same too white smile, same faded leather boots trying hard to look vintage. He greeted me with a side hug like we were best friends, though we barely knew each other in college. "You look corporate," he joked, eyeing my button-down and dusty flats. "You look like trouble," I replied. He grinned. "You'll love this." We drove for nearly 45 minutes into the desert. No cell signal, no traffic, just the dull hum of tires over cracked asphalt and cacti standing like sentinels on either side. As the buildings disappeared and the land grew emptier, so did my confidence. By the time we pulled up to the property, I was already rehearsing polite ways to say no thanks. But there it was, a rust-covered shell of a gas station, slumped like a wounded animal under the Arizona sun. The sign above read Copper Flame, its letters barely clinging to the faded board. One gas pump was missing entirely, the other was draped in spiderwebs. The windows were boarded. The desert wind kicked up sand around our feet. "You're joking," I said flatly. Zane walked toward the building, arms outstretched. "This is it, 25 grand. That's all. I negotiated it down from 35. Owner's old, wants to get rid of it fast. Because it's trash." "No, because he doesn't know what's coming." I narrowed my eyes. "Explain." He leaned against the broken pump like a used car salesman about to deliver the pitch of his life. "There's a new highway in development, State Route 84 extension. It's going to cut right through here. Rest stops. Tourism. Commercial development. I've seen the zoning maps. This place will be in the center of everything in 2 years. You fix it up now, you're sitting on a gold mine." I folded my arms. "And how exactly do you know this?" He shrugged. "Let's just say I have friends who owe me favors at the city office." That was Zane's magic trick, saying just enough to intrigue you, never enough to confirm anything. "I don't have $25,000. Harper, you're a Quinn. Ask your dad, or your trust fund." I flinched. "That's not happening." Zane sighed, then turned serious. "Look, I'm offering this to you because I know what it's like to want to win. I could flip this to a dozen investors tomorrow, but I want you to have it. You need something that's yours, right?" That hit harder than I expected. It wasn't the property. It was the possibility, the chance to shut everyone up, the chance to finally say I did it. We stood in silence as the desert wind hissed through broken signs and overgrown weeds. "This is insane," I muttered. Zane smiled. "Yeah, but maybe it's the good kind of insane." That night, I didn't sleep. I did math instead, credit limits, favors I could call in, friends I hated asking for help. It was stupid, risky, desperate. But I was tired of playing it safe and always losing. By sunrise, I'd made my choice. I was going to buy the damn gas station. The purchase went through faster than I expected. Too fast, in hindsight. Zane introduced me to a real estate lawyer in Phoenix, a man who barely looked up from his paperwork. I signed the documents in a bland office that smelled like old carpet and printer toner. The check left my account, my stomach dropped, and the keys landed in my palm with a weight far heavier than metal. I was officially the owner of Copper Flame. I drove back out there alone, the desert heat slamming into my windshield like a dare. The building looked even worse now, without Zane's salesman charm fogging my judgment. The convenience store was gutted. The bathroom door hung crooked off its hinge, and the storage room reeked of oil and rot. Still, I told myself, renovation is possible. Vision is what separates the dreamers from the doers. But the lie didn't last long. 3 weeks later, while scrubbing black mold off the back wall, I got a call from a friend of mine, Nina, a realtor who worked in land valuation. "Did you seriously buy a gas station off Route 85? She asked. "Yeah, why?" "I just checked the listing history. That place was on the market for 403 months ago. You paid 25? The word 40 hit me like a slap. "What?" I whispered, the sponge dropping from my hand. "I think your friend scammed you, Harper. That price was inflated. The zoning project Zane mentioned? It hasn't even passed review. There's no highway. Not yet. Maybe not ever." My ears rang. I walked outside, sat on the cracked curb next to the pump, and stared at the empty horizon. I had been played. Again. I called Zeniance. Twice. 5 times. Voicemail. I texted, "I need to talk. Now." No reply. Just wind. Just silence. I looked around the lot. The peeling paint, the rusted roof, the sagging power lines. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a graveyard for hope, and I had bought a plot right in the middle. The worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the humiliation. It was the feeling that maybe my family had been right all along. That night, I didn't go home. I sat on the dusty floor of the convenience store, surrounded by broken glass and old receipts, thinking about every time I had dared to believe in something and lost. Was I cursed? Naive? Just not built for this? I could already hear Colton's voice. So, is this the part where you ask Dad for help? No. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. If this was a trap, I'd fight my way out of it even if I had to crawl. Even if I had to bleed. Even if I had to rebuild this dump with my own bare hands. The desert doesn't forgive, but sometimes, it forgets. A week after Zane vanished, I found myself in a losing battle with a leaking pipe beneath the floor of the convenience store. The water seeped through the cracked tile and pooled in the corner like a slow betrayal. I couldn't afford a plumber. I barely had money for groceries. So I did what desperation demands. I started digging. The tiles were old, brittle. It took a crowbar and a lot of cursing to get them up. The dirt underneath was dry, compacted by decades of neglect. As I chipped away layer by layer, sweat dripping down my spine, I heard something strange. Clank. Not dirt, not rock. Wood. My heart skipped. I knelt, brushing aside dust and debris, revealing a warped wooden panel, dark and aged. I tapped Ithalo. There were rusted nails around the edges. I pried them loose with the back of the crowbar, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from something older. Instinct. The board creaked free with a groan, revealing a shadowed void beneath. A staircase. What the hell? I whispered. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and began to descend. The wooden steps moaned under my weight, but somehow held. The air was damp and smelled faintly of old wood, metal, and something else sweet and sour, like aged fruit or wine. At the bottom, I reached a low-ceilinged cellar, no larger than a one-car garage. Dust clung to everything. Cobwebs draped the corners like funeral veils. But what caught my eye were the shelves lined with bottles. Dozens. No, hundreds. Old, dark, green glass. Sealed with wax. Labels faded but still readable in parts. I picked one up carefully. It was heavy and cold. Chateau d'Aubon, 1919. Another read. Clos Marceau, 1923. The handwriting was in calligraphy. Some bottles bore European stamps. Others had strange codes etched on the glass dates, batches, initials. It didn't look like junk. It looked intentional. Preserved, hidden. I set the bottle down gently and stepped back, my pulse echoing in my ears. What was this? A forgotten stash? A collector's secret vault? No. This was older. Smarter. Bootleggers. The thought hit me like a lightning bolt. During the Prohibition era, Arizona, just like Nevada, had been a hotspot for illegal alcohol smuggling. Remote locations. Hidden stockpiles. Secret cellars. And I had just uncovered one. I sat on the wooden steps for a long while, heart racing. My mind couldn't keep up with what I was seeing. All I knew was this. The universe had buried something beneath the very place I was mocked for buying. Copper Flame wasn't a joke. It was a secret. A buried story. A silent opportunity. And for once in my life, maybe just maybe, I had stumbled into the right kind of crazy. I didn't sleep that night. Who could? My kitchen table was now home to 6 dusty wine bottles, laid out like ancient relics under the weak light of a ceiling bulb. I stared at the faded labels, the wax seals, the hand-scribbled dates as if they held the answers to every failure I'd ever lived through. But I knew one thing. I needed someone who could tell me what this actually was. So I did what every self-respecting millennial does. I Googled. After 3 hours of obsessive scrolling and forum diving, I found a boutique auction house in Phoenix, Langston, Row, known for vintage wine and antique spirits. I sent them a discreet email. Inherited property, found old bottles, need appraisal, confidential please. They replied within 2 hours. 3 days later, I found myself in a room that smelled of leather and old wood, sitting across from Mr. Elliot Langston, a man who looked like he'd been born wearing cufflinks. He examined each bottle like a surgeon, turning them slowly, inspecting the glass density, the ink, the wax. He didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. When he finally looked up, his voice was soft but firm. "Miss Quinn, these are not ordinary bottles. This one," he held up a Chateau d'Aubon 1919, "recently sold in London for 85,000. I blinked. "Each?" He nodded. "Assuming proper storage, yes. And this," he gestured to another bottle labeled Clos Marceau 1923, "could fetch even more, especially with the Prohibition-era origin." These weren't just stored, they were hidden and preserved remarkably well. I couldn't breathe. "How many? How much?" I stammered, afraid to even ask. He leaned back. "That depends. How many bottles do you have?" I lied. "A few dozen." His eyes twinkled. He knew, but he didn't push. "If you're sitting on a cellar full of these, we're talking millions, Miss Quinn. Tens of millions, possibly." I walked out of that office with numb fingers and adrenaline in my throat. Millions? I drove straight back to Copper Flame, heart thudding against the steering wheel like a drum. I counted everything, bottle by bottle, crate by crate. Some were shattered, others perfect. Some handwritten, others stamped with foreign emblems. I filled an old spiral notebook with rows of names, dates, wax colors, levels. By midnight, I'd cataloged over 600 bottles. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or panic. Was this real? Was this the moment? I made one decision that night. I would sell 10 bottles, no more, just enough to confirm the value and fund protection. Mr. Langston helped me organize a private auction, quiet, selective, and under the radar. Within 2 weeks, those 10 bottles sold for 1.3 million. I stared at the numbers on the closing contract like they were in a foreign language. My bank account blinked to life, full of zeros I had only ever dreamed about. I looked around the dusty convenience store, the cracked ceiling tiles, the broken vending machine still humming in the corner. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at failure. I was looking at foundation. Word spreads fast in Arizona, especially when it smells like gold. Within 3 weeks of the auction, the news slipped out despite every NDA Mr. Langston made them sign. One of the bidders posted a blurry photo of the wine crate on a luxury wine forum, and from there, it was wildfire. Copper Flame was no longer a joke. It was an anomaly, a mystery, a buried miracle. And then came the call. I was standing outside the newly installed glass doors of the convenience store, now renamed Desert Heritage Lounge, when my phone buzzed. "Mom." I almost didn't pick up. "Harper," she said, her voice strained, almost unfamiliar. We heard about the bottles, about the auction. Is it true?" I didn't answer. She pressed on. "Your father thinks. Maybe it's time we talked. Maybe you don't have to do this alone." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so expected. "Now you want to talk?" I said. When I had mold on my walls and debt collectors at my door, no one called. "Don't say that," she said sharply, slipping back into the matriarchal tone. "We were worried." "No, you were ashamed." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Your father thinks this is a good opportunity for the family. We could bring Desert Heritage into the Quinn portfolio, help manage it, scale it, control it," I cut in. "Harper." "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. An hour later, I got a text from Colton. "Heard you struck liquid gold. Impressive. Just be careful, big money is tricky. Happy to help with investments if you need real guidance." I stared at the message, mouth tight. No apology, no recognition, just a reminder of where he still thought I belonged under his advisory wing, under the Quinn brand. I didn't reply. Then, Ivy called. "Harps," she chirped, like we hadn't spent a decade at emotional war. I saw the photos. Stunning work. Honestly, I'd love to help redesign the space. I've got this concept in mind, retro-futuristic bootlegger chic. It would elevate the brand, and obviously I'd give you the family discount. I blinked. "You mean the same family that laughed at me for buying this place?" She went quiet. I didn't. Thanks, Ivy, but I've already got someone. Someone who didn't mock me. I hung up. And then came the final move. The king himself. Charles Quinn. My father. He didn't call. He summoned. An email, brief and sterile. Lunch. Friday. Quinn Holdings. Noon. I showed up because I wanted to look him in the eye. He sat at the end of the long marble table in his top-floor office, the Phoenix skyline behind him. He looked older, tired, but not humbled. Harper, he said, folding his hands. You've done something remarkable, truly. I waited. You've also wandered into territory much larger than yourself. This kind of asset requires structure, experience, legacy. There it was. I stared at him. You mean your legacy? He didn't blink. Let us help you. Bring desert heritage into the family. We'll protect it, grow it, give it what it needs. You think I haven't already done that? I said quietly. It's bigger than you now. I leaned forward, locking eyes with the man who once told me I had no discipline. No, Dad, it's finally big enough to be mine. For the first time in my life, he looked unsure. I stood. Thank you for the offer, but I didn't claw my way out of ruin to hand it all back. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. That weekend, I signed a partnership with Horizon West, a direct rival to Quinn Holdings. Their CEO, Amelia Tran, met me for coffee in Tucson and said simply, "We believe in builders, not heirs." I chose her. We secured $15 million in funding to expand Desert Heritage into a full-blown heritage resort, complete with a wine archive, prohibition-themed cocktail lounge, desert view suites, and a private, speakeasy-style casino. The family tried again, emails, invitations, let's reconnect brunches. But I didn't need reconnection. I needed respect. And I had finally earned it from everyone but them. Which was fine. Because I'd finally earned it from myself. The first time I saw a tour bus pull up to Desert Heritage, I almost cried. A group of travelers stepped off, squinting at the Arizona sun and pointing at the building like it was a landmark, which somehow it had become. We were still under construction, but people were already curious. The legend was spreading. The woman who bought a gas station and found a treasure beneath it. It wasn't just luck. It was grit. With a $15 million investment from Horizon West, we broke ground fast. I hired local contractors, not big-name firms. I wanted people who knew the land, who respected the desert. Every brick laid was a declaration. I built this. The convenience store became a high-end wine archive, lined with glass cases that told the story of the hidden cellar. We displayed a curated selection of bottles, each accompanied by a small plaque detailing its history and origin. Visitors didn't just sip wine, they walked through time. We restored the original cellar, leaving the trapdoor exactly as I found it. We built a spiral staircase leading down, with soft lighting and preserved wooden beams. We named it the Vault. Next door, the old service garage was transformed into the Ember Room, a speakeasy-style lounge that offered live jazz on weekends and cocktails crafted from vintage recipes. Every detail burnished copper ceilings, Prohibition-era wallpaper, dimmed Edison lights was a nod to the past I had quite literally uncovered. But it wasn't all nostalgia. In the back of the property, we built a modern desert-themed boutique hotel, the Dustlight Inn. Minimalist, sun-washed colors, cactus gardens, rooftop yoga. A place where travelers could rest between the past and the present. And me? I was in the center of it all, clipboard in hand, boots caked in dust, hair pulled back, not a drop of designer makeup in sight. Some days I worked 16 hours. Some nights I collapsed into bed without dinner. But every morning, I rose with purpose. I no longer built to prove my family wrong. I built because this rough, sun-scorched place was finally mine. We hired veterans who'd struggled to find work, young women with no experience but tons of hunger, former waitresses, mechanics, artists. I trained them myself, taught them how to host a wine tasting, How to greet guests with pride. How to tell the story of a woman who refused to quit. They didn't just work at Desert Heritage. They belonged there. Every nail driven, every wall painted, every crate cataloged. It became more than construction. It became healing. I wasn't chasing headlines anymore. I wasn't out to humiliate my family. That ship had sailed and, honestly, they'd done it to themselves. Now, I was chasing legacy. Not the one written for me. The one I was writing, day by day, under the blistering Arizona sun. Tonight, I sit on the porch of my new house, a modest, sun-drenched adobe villa, nestled on a ridge just outside of Maricopa. From here, I can see the lights of Desert Heritage glowing softly in the distance, like a constellation born from broken glass and second chances. It's quiet. No phones ringing, no laughter echoing from judgmental siblings. Just the desert wind, and the deep knowing that this silence is earned. I keep a framed photo on the table beside Mione. I took the day after the first auction. Me, standing in the half-gutted convenience store, holding a bottle of wine with dirt still on my hands and disbelief in my eyes. I don't keep it to remember the treasure. I keep it to remember the fight. Because it wasn't the wine that changed my life. It wasn't even the money. It was the day I decided I didn't need anyone's permission to matter. My family still sends messages sometimes. Ivy tagged me on a social post last week. Proud of my sister, building empires, as if the cruelty never happened, as if she had been cheering me on all along. I didn't respond. Colton sent a proposal about merging family legacies. I blocked his number. My father never called again. And that's okay. I didn't build Desert Heritage to win their approval. I built it so I'd never have to need it. And if you're listening to this, wondering if your dream is too small, too strange, or too far away, let me say this. Sometimes, the thing that looks like your worst mistake is just the first brick of the life you were meant to build. Sometimes, the people who doubt you are just background noise meant to teach you how to hear your own voice. And sometimes, a broken-down gas station in the middle of nowhere turns out to be a beginning. Not a Quinn legacy. Not a family project. Just mine. Harper.